Hey everyone, this is Chris,
And Lorenzo.
and welcome to our Best of Saturday series. Now that we have hundreds of episodes, we get a lot of listeners asking us where to start.
So we'll be selecting some of our most popular episodes to share each Saturday from our years of podcasting. We hope you enjoy it.
No role plays, just real. Chris and Lorenzo share 4 decades of combined experience to help you become a more effective leader.
We've never really, as a workforce, spent a lot of time on making sure we're developing good leaders.
We'll be able to share stories, experience, mistakes, failures, successes.
This is Hacking Your Leadership.
Welcome to Hacking Your Leadership. I'm Chris.
And I'm Lorenzo.
And Lorenzo, on this episode, I want to talk about a kind of double-edged sword of leadership skills that I've been hearing a lot about as necessary to be a good leader, these 2 different skills, but that they don't seem to find themselves in the same people. They seem to find themselves in different people, meaning I know some people who are good at one and some people are good at the other, but not many people who are good at both. And those 2 skills are command skills and empathy skills.
Okay.
It's obvious that a leader needs to be able to have both. Command skills, I think, was more highly sought after for a long time, for many years, or maybe a couple generations. And now we're moving into this realm where empathy skills and the softer skills are more sought after. And I know a lot of people who are really good at those skills, but they lack the command skills that are sometimes necessary in order to kind of galvanize a team, or kind of convey a sense of that you know what you're doing and that everything's going to be okay. Do you ever struggle with this? Do you find yourself better at one set of skills over another, like naturally, and having to kind of summon the other one? How has this kind of impacted your career, and has it been different as you gotten older?
I think I've shared this before on the show, where earlier on in my leadership career, I talked about kind of overusing empathy and really connecting with a team and looking at small successes or small improvements as big successes. And,
Right.
What I had to find out was that, it's good to care about your team. It's good to have empathy. It's good to, provide people with an environment where they feel supported and that you can kind of, see things from their perspective or, walk a little bit in their shoes to understand what they're going through and trying to execute strategy. And I think that the second piece of that, though, around command skills is, it's funny. I often used humor. I often used, connecting with people, building trust and a good relationship as a means of command skills. Many people think of command skills and they immediately think of like somebody who's in charge, and they're usually maybe loud or robust, or, like they've got this kind of take charge attitude or this type of tonality in their voice where they just sound like they're telling people to go do things.
I disagree that's what they are, but I do agree with you that that's what a lot of people think.
Correct, exactly.
Yeah.
And that's where I was going with it, right?
Okay,
like
good.
when you hear command skills, that's what most people think. The reality is command skills is like, are you able to drive people in a way, get their attention, get their commitment. Are you able to help people take action based upon, your expectations or your requests or those types of things? So there's many ways that you can have command skills that show up differently in regards to, how people view you or hear you or see you. So I think that for me in my career, to answer your question, I've always been really good, in my opinion, around empathy and being able to understand people and connect with them in a way that is helpful and I believe empowering. But I've also been over time, I've learned that the best utilization for myself around command skills is making connections with people to be able to ask them to go do work. In a way that they feel is that I respect them, that they respect me, that I trust them, that they trust me, and then celebrating the great work that they've done. Like that for me, I think is how I've leveraged command skills over time, and then also that it is different for different levels of people. So like how I utilize command skills for leaders is very different than how I use it for maybe individual contributors or people that are not in a leadership role.
Yeah, that's spot on. We just got through the holidays, and this time of year, we most people tend to spend more time around family members that they maybe don't see as often the rest of the year, and there are conversations that happen during this time of year that don't happen other times of year, because you're around people who, hopefully love you unconditionally and stuff like that. So I was getting into a conversation over the last few weeks with some family members around, and it was just kind of anecdotal. It was kind of, our minds go down different places when we're with family, around what would happen in kind of like a post-apocalyptic Walking Dead kind of scenario. Not the zombie part, but just the, there's no services, no government, no, just an absence of anything that's like an overarching structure. What would happen? And I said my contention was that in the absence of leadership, somebody in leadership fills that void, whether because they want to or choose to, or because the rest of the group makes them that. And I believe that speaks less about who the leader is and more about who the rest of the people are. Meaning, I think
Sure.
people want to have someone to follow. A lot of people do. There are some people who don't need it to feel comfortable, but I think a lot of society doesn't feel comfortable unless they believe somebody is in charge or at least in control of the situation, especially when you're talking about a chaotic environment. And so I've always thought command skills were just what it's the ability to, if I can look at somebody and in amongst this chaos, there's this person who just seems to not feel chaotic. It doesn't seem like the chaos is impacting them because they know something that the rest of us don't know. They happen to, either they see something we don't see, or they've been through this before and they know it's going to work out all right, or they just seem to kind of know how the dots all connect. When you see a person like that, it's unmistakable. And when a person can project that to a group of people, especially in a leadership environment, in a place of employment, whether you're talking about groups of employees who seem to be caught up in the chaos, or groups of clients or customers that are caught up in the chaos, the calming effect that I think that has on the rest of the people who can see it, I think it should never be discounted. I think it's so important, and that can lead to even people who aren't necessarily great leaders being given the chance to show great leadership skills.
Yeah, it's funny that you mentioned that, because it's something that I've talked a lot about with leaders, especially when you are in the retail environment, is that you should be able to walk into any retailer and look around very quickly and know who's in charge. And I think that speaks to exactly what you're saying, is that, just people's, your body language, your ability to keep your head up, and the fact that you're observing everything that's going on and not just the one thing that's in front of you. Your ability to move quickly in between, whether it's employees or customers. Like, these are all things that, to your point, I think from a customer standpoint, it's calming, and it goes, okay, cool. Like, that person is clearly in charge. I don't know who they are, what they are, what's going on, but they are in charge. And many times, when you're building that skill set, it has nothing to do with your title. There's plenty of times when I can tell you that I've had, people that are not leaders, that are individual contributors, but based upon, their knowledge of the system, the trust they have with their peers, their ability to role model what they do, and that trust and respect that's there, you would just assume that they are the leader or that they're the person in charge, just because how other people go to them.
Oh yeah, they're definitely mutually exclusive, because on the same token, there are plenty of people with titles who don't have the ability to do that at all.
Right.
A lot of time, and I don't want to sound insulting to them. In a lot of situations, those people were promoted into leadership roles because of metrics that have nothing to do with leadership, and it's not their fault.
Sure.
They were never developed or groomed or given the skills necessary. They were thrown into these roles, and now their teams are paying the prices. So this doesn't mean the person who's in the leadership role that doesn't have these skills is necessarily a bad person. They could just be out of their element. But you're right. They are mutually exclusive. You do not need to have a title to have these skills, and you definitely do not need to have these skills to have those titles.
Yeah, and I think, having empathy and being able to talk to people and support them and understand where they're coming from, while at the same time asking people to go out and do their job, right?
Right.
And like that's where I think the largest struggle is, because I see that many times with leaders, especially those that are kind of new into their career, where they're doing their best to want to help, the people that work for them. They're doing their best to listen. They're doing their best to sit across the table and not maybe, scratch that itch that's saying like, look, I just need you to go out there and do this job, right? Like they're doing all these things to not do that, and then they kind of they fall too far into the empathy piece where now they go, oh, they've shown too much. I understand. Yeah, I totally get it. Nope, I get that. Yep, that's happened to me too. They do all these things, and then now they're in this place where they're like, okay, now how do I transition to say, okay, but what I really need you to go do is like show up to work on time and then go help these customers, right? like it's difficult, and I think that I think that it's because there's this thought or this idea of what empathy is, and then how you actually can show the best, the most amount of empathy to somebody. So my thought when it comes to empathy in the moment is be in the moment, right? When you are having a conversation with somebody that's either voicing concerns or going through something or having a hard time with something, simply just be in the moment and listen to them and repeat what they're saying and ask them for clarity and say, hey, would you mind if I give you some additional perspective? And you provide their perspective and then ask for their thoughts on that. So like being in a place where you can show empathy through the respectful listening of somebody's concerns or their thoughts and then actually having a conversation with them, that is empathy. You know what I mean? That in my opinion, that is real empathy, because you're not just sitting there as a shoulder to cry on and aligning with them on what's going on in life, but then you're actually having a conversation to help them work through it, give them some additional perspective, give them some help or some insight that may then be able to give them a little bit of clarity or give them a little bit of confidence in what they're going through and how they get through that situation itself. That to me is real empathy. And if you do it that way, it actually makes a very easy segue to then move on to how do I need you to show up here? Right? So like, let's think about this. Let's think about that. Of course, you can have whatever you need to handle your current situation, but here's what I also need from you. If you're going to be here at work, I need you to show up at the best of your ability. I need you to be able to be engaged. I need you to be able to deliver on these types of things, because that's what you're here. If you can't do those things, then you probably need to look at options that take you away from work and take you away from the business to go handle what you need to go handle. So like that's how I connect those two in my years of experience, where you can do both in the same conversation, and it doesn't feel like you're struggling one way or the other.
Right. I've always believed that empathy is almost, I don't want to say the opposite of, but it is independent of fairness. And what I mean by that is there are a lot of leaders out there who don't practice empathy well, but they have the best of intentions, and what they're trying to be is fair. They're trying to be fair to everyone. Empathy looks at the why behind any action that happens, and then the leader allows themselves to treat those individuals differently based on the why, not just based on the result. So a fair leader, in air quotes here, a fair leader would fire the same two people for being late for the 10th time. An empathetic leader would go, well, the one guy slept in every single day for a month straight, and that's why they're late. The other person got in a major car accident, and that's what prevented them from getting to work on time. That's where the two separate. It uses subjectivity as opposed to just saying, okay, we're all robots here. Let's look at the result or the outcome only, independent of anything that may have caused it. That's true fairness, I guess, but that lacks complete empathy. That doesn't take into account what got the person there to begin with.
Yeah, but this is kind of to my point earlier, though. So that person that got into the car accident, guess what? They're still late.
Of course they are.
Right. So they're still late. So
of course.
So if they're going to be late as a result of the car accident, what conversations and resources have you provided to then allow them to be able to, if potentially be late or go to appointments or do what they have to do while being covered as a result of the accident? Because again, like that's where I think though that it gets tricky, is that you want to be able to go immediately and say, well, they're both late 10 times. This one sleeps in, this one was in an accident, but at the end of the day, they are still both late. And so like if you're going to truly show empathy, it's not saying, well, hey, like I get it. I know you've been late because of this accident. The empathy was after the first or second time saying, hey, hold on here. I'm seeing a trend with you not being to work on time. And so I want to talk through this, and then provide you with options that will then allow you to either, is it adjust the schedule? Is it some type of a leave potentially? Is it working with your doctor? But again, I think not waiting for it to get to the point of where it's 10 lates for each of them to then pull back on empathy to say that that's how you show empathy.
So I think you're totally right. I think there's a little bit of miscommunication. I meant the final straw. Like the time that caused the person to be late was a car accident. Like they're not getting
I see what
fired.
you're saying.
Right.
Yes,
So
yes,
one
yes.
guy was fired
Yes,
because they
like,
slept in.
So I give you a great example. Even if you're literally hanging on by a thread around your attendance,
Yes.
you don't get fired on the day that you call in sick.
Right.
It just doesn't
Yes.
work that way. Like, you know what
Correct.
I mean? Like, if you're sick, you're still sick.
Yeah, so you look at the individual situations involved, and hopefully you're holding both people accountable. The fact that they're both on a final already means there's probably already an issue. But it's about being able to look at the individual's circumstances and having that be able to play a role in how you respond as a leader, as opposed to just saying, black and white, were they late or were they not, or any other of a number of situations where that can be involved. So yeah, I think there's a subjectivity to it, and I think that the empathy sometimes flies in the face of the fairness to the group in favor of fairness to the individual.
Yep, I completely agree. And with that, it brings us to this episode's 1 minute hack.
The 1 minute hack.
Okay, for this episode's 1 minute hack, what I want you to do is take some time, whether you can do it while you're working or if you have to wait till you're off work, and I want you to go to some busy retail establishments with a lot of foot traffic. And I want you to take a step back and don't necessarily engage with anybody, but kind of make mental notes on the employees you see walking around and anyone that seems to be in charge. They have a grasp of the situation. They're able to handle multiple customers and employees and situations all at the same time, and they seem to have a good grasp on things, good head on their shoulders. They're not freaking out and letting the situation get the best of them. And I want you to write down the actual things you're seeing from them, the behaviors you're seeing, not vaguely, oh, this person seems to be this or seems to be that, but talk about their body language, the way they hold their head, the way they talk to people. Write down those items and compare it to how you act when you're in your own environment, when you're talking with either groups of customers or groups or single employees, and see if it matches up. See if you give off the impression to the people that you encounter, whether they be employees or customers, that gives them the impression that you know what you're doing, that you're in control of the situation, and that you are a place that a person can come to for information or to feel more comfortable with what's going on around them. If there's deficits there, you know what you need to work on. You know those items that you wrote down that you saw in those other leaders that you witnessed at other places. Those are the items you have to work on, because it doesn't matter how you feel you command your teams and your environment and your clients and your customers. It matters how they feel about it. You don't get to tell other people that you have good command skills mixed with good empathy. That's what your teams and your clients and your customers have to tell you. So the more that you can exude those skills on a daily basis, the more you will amass a following of both customers and employees.
Yeah, I think it's a great 1 minute hack, and I just like the idea sometimes of going into other places and looking for behaviors as a leader to go validate. What do you see, and then how does that apply to the businesses that you run? I think it's good. It's almost like competitive shopping for the behaviors to be able to understand, are you leading your team in a way that continues to build their skill set? So I really like that idea.
Well, yeah, and there's no doubt that we talk about, being too close to a project. You want to have other eyes on something. If you spend a lot of time on it, you're too close to it. You don't have the ability to look at it with unbiased eyes. You talk about the ultimate example of that is your own self. You have less of ability to look at yourself through unbiased eyes and your own leadership than your teams and your customers and your clients do. So anytime you can validate it by looking at what good looks like, you're definitely on the right step.
Yep, I completely agree. And before we end this episode, I just want to call out a couple of things. I hope that everybody's been enjoying our new content and Thoughtful Thursdays this year, something that we're doing a little bit different and getting a little bit more specific in some of the themes and ideas that we don't cover an entire show. So thank you for listening and checking those out. Secondly, as you've seen on those Thoughtful Thursday programs and posts, please follow us on Instagram at Hacking Your Leadership. We continually put content up on our Instagram account. We clearly have a lot more listeners than we have followers on Instagram, so please check that out to see some additional content, sometimes short videos, memes that we post up in regards to leadership. But we're really looking forward to layering a lot more content this year on a lot more different platforms in so many, many different ways. So those are my two asks and go-gets for Chris and myself here on Hacking Your Leadership. And any other thoughts as we wrap up this episode?
No, I mean, this was a tough one because I know both of us have a hard time asking our listeners for anything. I have a hard time even asking people to go follow us. But now that we're putting a lot of good content on there, I love our Thoughtful Thursdays, and I think people get a lot out of it. So definitely go follow us at Hacking Leadership on Instagram, and I think you'll get a lot out of it.
You got it. So thank you all. This has been Hacking Leadership. I'm Lorenzo.
And I'm Chris.
And we'll talk to you all next time.